I want to ask you guys a question. And this is the question, I'm going to ask you this probably 10 times over the next day or so. Are you willing to become a serious follower of Christ? Okay? That's the question. Are you willing to become a serious follower of Christ? It's probably the most important question anyone's ever asked you. I used to be a school teacher. Up until last year, I was a school teacher, so I asked lots of questions. You know, what year was the War of 1812? All kinds of questions like that. They weren't all that important. Who knows what year was the War of 1812? No, that's all right. Are you willing to become a serious follower of Christ? Because when Jesus asked, he didn't ask the question in exactly that same phrase, but he said to them, you need to count the cost. If you're going to become my disciple, you better count the cost, because it's high. But the first part of that verse said, if you say you love God, you have to keep His commandments. That's what it said. Okay? If you say you love God, you have to keep His commandments. So I told you, Runner's the most well-trained horse I've ever trained. He's so well-trained that probably you may not even see the cues that I'm giving him to get him to walk in a circle. Those cues are so subtle that unless you know exactly what you're looking for, you may not see them. Okay? Now, he didn't start out that way. He started out as a young, dumb horse. Okay? He didn't know anything. So the first time I asked him to turn, what I had to do was take a rope and pull his head around and kind of thump him pretty hard to get him to turn. He didn't understand. But over the years, he and I have developed this really subtle level of communication. Are you willing to become a serious follower of Christ? Because if you set that as a goal in your life, part of that is learning to hear the voice of God, and you hear it in your heart. God speaks to your heart, the devil speaks to your head. You hear it in your heart, and you learn to hear God's voice, and it becomes very subtle so that God doesn't have to scream at you. I expect this weekend, the Holy Spirit is going to be really loud in some of you guys' heart. You're going to be so... God's going to be talking to you, and it's going to be like a thumping in your chest. He's yelling at you. Okay? He did it to me when I was young. The Holy Spirit yelled at me in my heart, loud. He doesn't do that to me now because I don't need it, because it's very subtle. I've learned. And so this is what I mean by setting goals. Would you like to be the kind of follower of Christ that Runner is with me, so that God doesn't have to yell at you to get you to do something? He can just whisper. And there's a level of trust involved in this. Okay? I have a pretty high level of trust of this horse, don't I? We're on concrete. I'm not wearing a helmet. I'm riding him bareback and bridleless. I trust this horse. Okay? He's earned that trust. And I often ask the Lord this: have I earned your trust? Have I been obedient to a degree that you really trust me